Hey guys, what's up? Rayman80 here, and today I have for you guys my Week 7 weekly recap for PICA Season 3. I'd like to thank Chris for taking over for Week 6. I had my wisdom teeth taken out, but I'm back and I can talk normally again. So I'll be continuing doing the weekly recaps until the end of the season. So Week 7, the last week of matches before we head into the rematches for the next 3 weeks. And this week was pretty interesting. We had a couple 6-0s, some pretty close matches, and unfortunately a couple forfeits, which I'll get to when I get to. But with that being said, let's get on to the first match. For our first match, we have the Philly Shuckles facing off against the Washington Red Shells. These two teams, which is, my team. These two teams are pretty evenly matched. We were both 5-1. We were both the top in our division, and we both are strong contenders for a playoff spot. However, the team Bob brought just didn't have enough firepower to really break through the team I brought. In the end, I was able to bring a wall that could handle every mon that Bob brought this game. Goodra was handled by Regirock, Mega Banette was handled by Regirock, Suicune was handled by Tangrowth, Rotomo was handled by Tangrowth, Jirachi was handled by Electros, and Heracross was handled by Florges. And then I also had Latias and Greninja in the back for some firepower to try and take some of them out. Rotomo got taken out by Electros' Flamethrower, Goodra got taken out by an Ice Punch from Regirock, Suicune died to a mixture of Power Up and Earthquake from Tangrowth, Jirachi died to Greninja's Dark Pulse, and then Floor just cleaned up the last two mons of Mega Banette and Heracross with some Moonblasts. So in the end, I just think that that Bob didn't just bring enough oomph to try and defeat my walls. Like, he didn't have enough wall breaking potential in the team that he brought in order to win. He in fact brought a very bulky team to my match, and I outbulked him. So it ended up being a 6-0 in my favor. I'm pretty confident the Philly Shuckles will bounce back from this. It's a hard loss to swallow, but he can definitely bounce back from this. As for me, this has boosted my lead in my division and has actually made me the #1 person in the league, actually. So that's pretty nice. I was the #1 person in the league last week, but I've just extended the lead even more. So, that's pretty cool. So with that being said, let's move on now to the second match, which is the Detroit Magnetons versus the Denver Dashers. So on to this match. This was going to be a very close match. Both of these people are very good battlers, and even though the Detroit Magnetons don't have that great of a record, they have still proven in other leagues as well as in their first battle that they do know what they're doing and can pull out wins. And this is a perfect example of them knowing what they're doing, as they were able to snatch a 1-0 victory against the Denver Dashers. It was kind of a slow start. Kingdra went down, and then Azumarill went down shortly after, and then Cresselia came in. And Cresselia began to set up Calm Mind in Politoed's face, since Politoed couldn't really do anything. A couple switches to break the sub later, and it's Mega Swampert versus Cresselia. Cresselia, even at +3, was only doing less than half than Mega Swampert. And Mega Swampert was able to break one of its sub with Waterfall. It then went for another Waterfall, doing around 37%, and then flinching Cresselia. The flinch doesn't matter as much as you would think, because even though that would have stopped it from Moonlighting, because Rain was out, Moonlight would have only healed 25%, and since Mega Swampert was doing more, and there was still 4 turns of Rain left, Mega Swampert was eventually going to be able to take out the Cresselia, unless the Denver Dashers wanted to switch it out, but from the looks of how they were playing it, I don't think they wanted to switch it out. So in the end, as much as that flinch looked like it mattered, it didn't really matter as much as people would have you believe. And from that point on, it was kind of just the Detroit Magnetons gaining back momentum and trying to secure the game. And it became a very close ending with Mega Swampert and Tornadus Therian versus Mega Lopunny. Mega Lopunny faked out the Mega Swampert, which was only at like 30-something%, and left it at like 10 10 or 8%, and then it actually packed Quick Attack to finish off the Mega Swampert. So it then became a match between Tornadostarian and Megalopunny. Could Tornadostarian live one hit from Megalopunny? And the answer was yes. Its return only did 74% to Tornadus, and Tornadus was able to kill with a 100% accurate Hurricane in Moraine. So with that, a very close 1-0 in the Detroit Magnetons' favor. I'm glad to see that the Detroit Magnetons have gotten off their losing streak and can finally start winning again. After the Denver Dashers, well, I'm happy they lost since they're in my division and they were really close to me. I am positive they'll bounce back, and I'm glad the Denver Dashers have been doing so well this season. Even if they are my rivals in my division, I'm glad that they're doing very, very well, and I have no doubt that they'll be able to get a win next week, as long as they put a lot of effort into it. So, moving on, we have the next match. So next up, we have the DMR Shadow Absols facing off against the Indus Valley Infernapes. Two teams that were, at that point, currently at 2-4. Cedric hasn't really had that impressive of a win yet. He got a win against the winless team of the LA Slowkings, and he got a forfeit win from the Detroit Magnetons after they had to deal with some family issues. So the DMR Shadow Absols were definitely looking for a win, showing off their battling prowess. On the other side, the Indus Valley Infernapes, well, not having the best season, have actually been able to pull out some pretty good upsets, beating the Sequim Malamar and the Richmond Quagsires, two top tier teams, and proving that he has the battling chops to beat most people in this league. So it was definitely going to be an interesting match, and interesting it was, as it ended up being a 1-0 victory for the DMR Shadow Absols, thanks to one Pokemon, Slurpuff. You see, while the Indus Valley Infernapes had the momentum most of the game, killing off a lot of the DMR Shadow Absols faster than the DMR Shadow Absols could feint some of the Indus Valley Infernapes mons, Cedric was actually whittled down a lot of the mons that could take on a Slurpuff at +6. Mega Venusaur was under half. Rotom Heat was at a lower amount of health. Alakazam's Sash was broken. Overall, he had prepared really well to finish off with a sweep from Slurpuff. But a sweep didn't seem like it was gonna happen until after killing off the Mega Slowbro with a Volt Switch. The Rotom Heat, instead of Volt Switching into Mega Venusaur, which could have handled Slurpuff with like a Sludge Bomb, he actually switched out into Vaporeon in order to handle Slurpuff, which allowed Slurpuff to set up the +6 with the Belly Drum and sweep the rest of his team. This could have been avoided if Vaporeon got a burn on Slurpuff, but contrary to what people believe, you don't get a burn every time you click Scald. And neither does your opponent. As for the Volt Switch itself, if he had Volt Switched into Mega Venusaur, he could have just Sludge Bombed the Slurpuff then and there, and then would have won the game right there. But, hindsight's 20/20, we all make mistakes in the heat of battle, it's fine. So, the DMR Shadow Absols now move on to a 3-4 record, while the Indus Valley Infernapes are at 2-5. The Indus Valley Infernapes are not knocked out of the playoffs yet. If they can win the rest of their games in either the Denver Dashers, Philly Shuckles, or the Richmond Quagsires lose their next 3 games, then the Indus Valley Infernapes can actually still make playoffs. As for the DMR Shadow Absols, as long as he can win the next 2 or 3 games, and then his opposing teams also lose 2 or 3 games, he can also still make playoffs. So these two teams still have pretty good. They still have playoff chances. They're not the most secure, like mine or the Richmond Quagsires or the Vesper Park Rangers, but it's still there. It's still there. That's what I'm looking for. So, moving on from this battle, we move on to the last Ruby Division versus Sapphire Division match. So next up, we have the Richmond Quagsires facing off against the Iowa Focus Energy. And this is another big surprise this week. We actually got another 6-0 this week. This time in the Richmond Quagsires' favor against the Iowa Focus Energy. I hope Nick prepped this week, and we're being honest. I'll be honest here, we kind of had a skewed vision of the Richmond Quagsires team. We focused on threats like Keldeo and a a Dragon Dancing or Scarf Salamence, Mega Diancie, set up Lucario. We had in mind his threats, but we weren't really thinking about his entire team for the most, and all of its possibility. We kind of ignored Skuntank, and we didn't consider the possibility of offensive Arcanine. Both of which kind of bit us in the ass, because we just really messed up this week. Though Setup Chestnut could have put in some work after the Salamence went down, for the most part, yeah, we couldn't really put any pressure on the Richmond Quizzes, as they just kind of steamrolled over the Iowa Focus Energy. Strangely enough, it's the Skuntank, the first time bring for Richmond Quizzes, by the way. This is the first time they brought Skuntank. Actually got 4 kills, which was pretty cool. You don't normally see Skuntank racking up those kills. But yeah, basically the Richmond Quizzes brought a lot of offense, some offense that Nick didn't expect, and Nick's team kind of just folded to that. And this was a pretty demoralizing loss, but Nick's still in the playoff race. As long as one of the teams who have a playoff spot lose a couple times, and he can win out for the rest of the season, he can get a playoff spot. So there is still hope for Nick yet. As for the Richmond Quizzes, they're in a pretty secure position, but it's not completely secured. If he goes on a losing slide, he will lose his spot. But I don't see that happening with the Richmond Quizzes. I still think he can still win at least one more game, which will probably guarantee him a spot. I'm not quite sure on that, but I think. Sorry about that. Someone walked into my room. But anyway, let's move on to the next batch of matches, the Diamond versus Pearl matches, and starting off, we have a bit of a downer. So we're starting off right now with a forfeit this week. The Transylvania Trevenants versus the Vespertine Park Rangers. The Vespertine Park Rangers got a forfeit win after the Transylvania Trevenants failed to show up at their scheduled time 2 times, and they couldn't really have their match any other times besides those. And we couldn't leave that game in the open for more than just a couple days, so the Transylvania Trevenants have accepted a forfeit loss. It's pretty sad, but he understands that he missed his times for his matches, and he understands that he should have been there for those times. So hopefully he can get some wins to make up for this, but his playoff chances look pretty bleak. He's mathematically still able to get into the playoffs, but just barely. If I'm remembering this correctly, the Shamrock Snovers are 4-3, so that would mean that the Shamrock Snovers would have to lose 3 times, and the Transylvania Trevenants have to win the rest of their games, which could happen, but it's highly unlikely. We'll see what happens, but hopefully the Transylvania Trevenants can at least win one more game. So moving on, we have the next match. So next up, we have the Berkhamsted Bastiodon facing off against the Shamrock Snovers. This was going to be a pretty interesting match. The Berkhamsted Bastiodon just recently gaining their first loss, and the Shamrock Snovers recently breaking their losing streak. The Berkhamsted Bastiodon were definitely interested in getting back to winning a lot, and during the first few turns, it looked like they were probably going to do that. Garchomp was able to catch the Darmanitan off guard by also being scarfed and killing it with an Earthquake. So in the beginning of the game, it's already 6-5, so definitely a big advantage to the Berkhamsted Bastiodon. However, things started to turn south as signs of hacks coming into play happened when Manaphy crit Tentacool with a +3 Psychic, which, probably didn't matter. I'd assume a Manaphy could probably take out a Tentacool with a +3 Psychic. I can make that assumption. But, that was a sign that things come, as in this game, the Berkhamsted Bastiodon got frozen twice, and most detrimentally of all, Dragonite actually got paralyzed from a static Ampharos when it went for Outrage, which was kind of bad considering that Dragonite could actually put a huge hole in the Shamrock Snovers team. So having that paralyzed means that it couldn't outspeed anything. It had to rely on extreme speed to take things out. And there was always that 25% chance of paralysis. In fact, if he didn't get paralyzed, he could have been able to kill the Porygon 2 sooner by outraging the Porygon 2 instead of having to go for extreme speed to get chip damage off, so that the Garchomp could kill the Porygon 2. Granted, even the Garchomp didn't kill the Porygon 2, leaving it at 2% health, and so that the Porygon 2 can also take out the Garchomp, and leaving the Rotom Fan alone to take on the rest of the Shamrock Snover's team. Heatran and Whimsicott both got taken out earlier on. Whimsicott by Manaphy, thanks to the Ice Beam Freeze, and Heatran by Porygon 2, which also got a freeze on it. But to be fair, it did have HP ground. And also to be fair, he switched in Whimsicott to the Ice Beam, even though he was in with a Dragonite against a Manaphy, so maybe you should have just sacked off a Heatran. It didn't really do much for the rest of the game, but that's just my opinion. So it was Rotom Fan against the world during the end game. Porygon 2 was at 2%, Dreadgon was at 6%, and Manaphy was still at full. So it was definitely possible, but Rotom Fan did have a little bit of damage on it. So after it took out Porygon 2, Manaphy was able to come in and kill with an Ice Beam. So it ended in a 2-0 victory for the Shamrock Snovers. Yeah, there was a lot of hacks involved, but I'm not sure if the Shamrock Snovers could have won without it. Like, they definitely could have. They're a good team. They've proven that throughout the season. And the Berkhamsted Bastiodon are not invincible, to some people's surprise. But yeah, the matchup was there. The matchup was definitely there for the Shamrock Snovers to win without hacks, but hacks did decide who would be the winner for this one. So moving on, let's go to the next match. So we now have the Oneonta Quagsires facing off against the Gotham Golbats. These were both, if I remember correctly, these are both 2 and 4 teams as well, just like the match with the DMR Shadow Absols versus the Indus Valley Infernape. So, and each have pulled out wins in their own right. Granted, I think I would consider the Gotham Golbats win against Western Park Rangers more impressive than either of the Oneonta Quagsires wins. I believe both of them have both beaten the Transylvania Trevenants, and I know the Oneonta Quagsires beat the LA Slowking, so yeah, I definitely think that the Gotham Golbats have more accolades than the Oneonta Quagsires, and I think that the Gotham Golbats have also put in a better performance than the Oneonta Quagsires. However, Dylan kind of proved people wrong and was able to sweep up the game with Volcarona, with Volcarona nabbing 5 out of the 6 kills for this match, not even dying at the end. So in the beginning, it was a pretty even match. Mega Absol was able to take out, if I remember correctly, it was Virizion with the Play Rough. I think that was what happened. Yeah, I want to say it was Virizion with the Play Rough. No, it was Gliscor after critting Play Rough and then killing it with a knockoff. And then afterwards, Mega Altaria revenge. And then he sent in Volcarona, set up a single Quiver Dance, and kind of just won from there. The Gotham Golbats really did not prepare for a Volcarona sweep, and thus they paid for it and lost by a large margin, a 5-0 margin to be exact. It happens to the best of us. We all overlook Pokemon. Like I said back in when I was talking about the Richmond Rayquaza versus Iowa Focus Energy match. We all overlook Pokemon, and it does bite us in the butt, but you know, we just gotta move on from it. I know the Gotham Golbats are just have made an interesting transaction this week, trading away Ferrothorn for Scolipede. They're probably gonna have some good fun with that. And while they don't have the best shot at playoffs, they still do have a chance at playoffs. They are not mathematically eliminated yet. In fact, they have a better playoff chance than people like the Transylvania Trevenants, who do have one more loss than them, which means that it's even farther away from them to get into the playoffs. But all of these teams still have a chance to make it to the playoffs. There's only one team, if I did the math correctly, that's eliminated from the playoffs, and I'll get to that team in a little bit. But yeah, congrats to the Oneonta Quagsires for getting that 5-0, and congrats on redeeming yourself from messing up the Dominant Suite from last week. If you only had clicked Ice Shard against the Espeon, but shoulda, woulda, coulda. So, man, I'm stuttering a lot here. So moving on, let's get to the final match of this week. At least that's what I would normally say. However, the match never happened. The LA Slowkings have to forfeit this match due to time constraints. They apparently had a very busy week and could not plan. And even though they could have been given an extension, even with the one-day extension, they could not they didn't have time that day to really plan and play, so they decided to forfeit the match and give the Squib Malamars a 3-0 victory. And with that, the LA Slowkings I believe, are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. If they are 0-7, and there are only 3 weeks left, yeah, they're mathematically eliminated because the teams with playoff contentions in their conference, the lowest record they have is a 4-3. And since there's only 3 weeks left, the worst score they could have get is a 4-6, and the best score the LA Slowkings can get is a 3-7. So that means the LA Slowkings are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Sad to see the first team go, but it was going to happen eventually. Hopefully this winless team can eventually get a win, at least one, just so that they can feel a little bit of pride, but we'll see. The team they drafted has not been working out for them. It's too offensive, and overall they haven't been playing that great either, so we'll see what happens. As for the Squid Malamars, a nice 3-0 padding win for them. They are closing in against the Vespertine Park Rangers. They both got because both of them got a forfeit win. They both got the same amount of score added to their score for this week. So the standings don't really change for them. The Vespertine Park Rangers are still above the Squid Malamars, but the Squid Malamars are on their tail. And actually, the Vespertine Park Rangers are facing off against the Squid Malamars next week. So we're going to see a pretty interesting match there, and probably see a shake-up maybe in who's the #1 person in the Pearl Division, or the Vespertine Park Rangers could just win again, and he will remain #2, and the Vespertine Park Rangers will remain #1. We'll just have to see. So let's go ahead and move on to the standings. So starting off with the Ruby Division, we now have a new leader of the Ruby Division. It is the Richmond Quagsires, currently 5-2 with a +11 differential. The Philly Shuckles are only 4 differential points away, with a 5-2 record with a +7 differential. The DMR Shadow Absols are currently in 3rd with a 3-4 record with a -6 differential. And the Detroit Magnetons make up the last of the Ruby Division, 2-5 with a -12 differential. Moving on to the Sapphire Division, we have the Washington Red Shells, my team, who are 6-1 with a +21 differential. Pretty nice. The Denver Dashers, who even with the loss still have a pretty good differential with a 5-2 record with a +12 differential. The Iowa Folks Energies are currently in 3rd, 3-4 with a -4 differential. And the Indus Valley Infernapes, while in last, they actually don't have as bad of a differential as Nick. 2-5 with a -3 differential. They are 1 differential point actually ahead of Nick. Moving on, we have the Diamond Division. We have the Berkhamsted Bastiodon, still in first even after a loss, with a 5-2 record with a +11 differential. The Oneonta Quagsires follow with a 3-4 record with a -7 differential. The Transylvania Trevenants are afterwards 1-5 with a -17 differential. 1-6, sorry, I meant to say 1-6. And the LA Slowkings are in last currently with a 0-7 with a -20 differential. It is impossible for them to actually get back into a positive differential, but hopefully they can still get a win. In the Pearl Division, we have the Vespertine Park Rangers, currently 5-2 with a +14 differential. The Squim Malamars follow, 5-2 with a +7 differential. The Shamrock Novers are in 3rd with a 4-3 record with a -2 differential. And the Gotham Golbats are in last for the Pearl Division, 2-5 with a -12 differential. That huge 5-0 loss really put them behind in differential, but they can still make a playoff run if the pieces align themselves. So let's move on now to the MVP race. So moving on to the MVP race, we have a new #1 in Mega Scizor. He was #1 in week 2, and then he kind of remained near the top for these following weeks. But he's back at #1 after Blissey took off a little bit of a fall this week, with 9 kills, 3 deaths, and a +6 differential, the same as last week. So nothing really has changed for him. Following that, we have Ladias, who also has the same record as last week. 8 kills, 2 deaths with a +6 differential. Both those Pokemon owned by me and the Washington Red Shells. And finally, we have something from Gargleflop in the Berkhamsted Bastiodon, Mega Sableye, who's been around the top for a while now. Finally cracking the top 3 with 8 kills, 2 deaths, and a +6 differential. Same thing as my Ladias. He's been around the top 5 for the past few weeks, so With Blissey dropping down a little bit this week, Mega Sableye was able to take over a spot in the top 3. Moving on to the rest of the top 10, we have, let me pull it up. We have Blissey now as the number 4, 9 and 4 with a +5 differential, owned by the Iowa Focus Energies. Keldeo follows 7 and 2 with a +5 differential, owned by the Richmond Quagsires. With the same record as that, we have Suicune, owned by the Philly Shuckles, and Tornadus Therian, owned by the Detroit Magnetons. We then have Greninja, 6 and 5 with a +5 differential, owned by me. Which is pretty cool. I have 3 Pokemon now in the MVP race. Thundurus Therian follows, 6 and 1 with a +5 differential as well, owned by the Philly Shuckles. And finally, we have Porygon Z, 5 and 0 still, not being brought to any other matches ever since that Haxie match against the Shamrock Snovers. Owned by the Denver Dashers with a +5 differential. So, that will be your weekly recap for this week. Sorry I stuttered so much in this one. I'm still recovering a bit from the surgery. It still feels weird. My mouth still feels weird from getting my wisdom teeth removed, but I'm still capable of talking, and, you know, I hope you still enjoyed this weekly recap. If you did, good for you. I'm glad I'm making someone happy with these videos, and I will see you guys in the next weekly recap. Goodbye.